Hey, Presh, feel free to join us on stage whenever you get the chance. I'm not sure if you can hear us.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, what's up?
Awesome. One sec. I was joining on my computer first, and then I couldn't join as speaker. I think.
Oh yeah, that's a Twitter thing. So this is actually like our first time trying out spaces.
Oh,
We've
sweet.
usually always used like Discord stages and stuff, so yeah. Fun experiment. But anyways, welcome to this talk. I'm Ayman Maheshwari, and then the other guy speaking who you'll hear is Barakat, who's joined in from the Builder Group account.
Of course.
It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Yeah, likewise.
Hello to our audience. Yeah. Hello to our audience. So welcome everyone. Presh, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself just for, the few folks in the audience that aren't, really familiar with who you are and what you do, feel free to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for having me out to speak to the community. I'm super pumped and love the builder community that y'all are building as well. So yeah,
Appreciate it.
I'm Presh. I work at a early stage venture firm in San Francisco called Launch, and we invest really in builders at the early stage. So we'll write check sizes anywhere from 100K up to $5 million. And we typically like to engage in companies or founders or products at very early stage. So products that have a couple users, um, builders that 1 to 5 person teams. That's really like a sweet spot. We run an accelerator program. Think like a smaller YC. So we only pick 7 companies per cohort and invest 100K and really try to help these companies, run and turn them into, big businesses over time. But really started my kind of early career also at Launch, but on the media side of our business. So we also have a podcast, and um, Launch is founded by this guy named Jason Calacanis, who started a couple companies and then invested in some big names like Uber, Robinhood, Com, really amazing companies. But at the early stage, no one really thought that they would be big. And at the early stage, we're really fundamentally just like builders building cool products. Um,
Oh yeah.
yeah. And so that's what I do now on the investment side. Started on the media side doing like growth and marketing. But yeah, now just really focused on finding cool products and talking to people like you guys building cool things.
That's great. Yeah, launches. I've seen it obviously on my Twitter timeline quite a lot, as well as Jason. Great guy. So yeah, it's lovely that you're sort of recognizing potential in like early age startups and firms and whatnot, and taking the time as your sort of career to invest in them. Good on you for that. That's great. I think builders are, the future builders are gonna do great things, like you said. With Builder Group and stuff. So we appreciate your support on that front. So coming back to sort of like the initial phase in your journey, like your timeline essentially. What did you start off with? What really got you into this whole space? And
Yeah,
when?
it's a great question. So it really started. Um, so in like, I'll start off like in high school. In high school, since I know this is a pretty young audience, um, I had no real like idea of what I wanted to do. I had been interested in technology, had been interested in startups in a sense. I really didn't know the term like startups really, but I had just known like cool technology. I mean, I would say my first like introduction into tech was just like being a fan of Apple, as I'm sure many people are. And so the way Apple products were built, big fan of Steve Jobs and just like his whole kind of idea about bringing technology and arts and humanities and like all and combining all these um, things and creating just like beautiful products. And so I would say that was super inspiring. And growing up, that got me into technology. And then in high school, kind of lost that. Um, didn't explore more technology, and so I was kind of just on the sidelines, always like spectating, and more on like the product side of things, physical products, I should say. Um, and then um, during like my final years of high school, and also just like, yeah, I would say during final years of high school, I was starting to like think of what I wanted to do, and I thought I would just do like a standard thing, like go to university and maybe after graduating work at a bank or something like that. And so I started that process because everyone around me was kind of doing that same thing, and so when everyone around you is doing that, you think that's probably the right thing to do. And so I did that. Went to university, and then quickly realized after my first year that this is something I really didn't want to do. Mainly because like I was a terrible student, and then I hated just like going to classes and just learning, for the 8 hours a day. So I figured like there could be a better use of my time, and something that I'm more interested in. And the way that or what I decided next to do is really just like find someone or some company to work at, and just kind of use that as my education. So that would be my supplemented, university degree, or college degree. And so that's what I did basically after first year. I still didn't have any like opportunities lined up, but I decided I was going to drop out. And I was like failing a bunch of classes as well, so it naturally just made sense. Um, so dropped out after first year, and during that summer, since university like is you get like a 4 month break after your two terms are done. So I had 4 months to figure stuff out in terms of what I wanted to do. And so what the kind of plan that I had at the time, which was, and I was also like building small like websites and just like e-commerce stores at the time, just to like kind of play around and um, build and tinker. Everyone here is a builder, so just like the weekends are always a great time to just think of ideas and kind of execute on them. So building tiny projects while I was doing this. And so in that 4 month period, I would reach out to hundreds of different entrepreneurs that I had respected, different startups that I had been inspired by, um, and I would reach out, find a contact person on LinkedIn, find out their email and then send them an email of myself pitching them the idea to work for them. And I was willing to work for free at the time. I could do that, obviously, because I was living at home and didn't have really any overhead expenses. So, really, was just pitching this idea to work for influential and inspiring people for free. Um, and so did that. Most obviously, like 99% of people didn't respond. One of them who did respond happened to be Jason Calacanis. And I had known about him only because I had started following his podcast, This Week in Startups. And so I was like, this is a podcast I listen to, and he seems like a smart person and might be a great, to kind of get into the tech world. But I really didn't have any interest in being an investor or VC. And honestly, I still don't really even consider myself an investor or like in VC. It really is just like want to be around like builders and build cool products. That's fundamentally what I like care about. So the investing part is just like it's cool that we're able to enable all these things. But anyways, I had then reached out to Jason. And from there he emailed me back probably like within 5-10 minutes, which was super crazy, and I got really excited, like took a screenshot of the email and like still have that to this day. But he responded, and he kind of just said like, what are your skills and what do you hope to accomplish in life? um, and then I sent him back an email saying a whole bunch of things. In hindsight, it was a terrible email because I just like it was like 3 paragraphs and a lot
Right,
of
right.
words. Yeah, and so short and sweet is always the best way to go, which I learned right after. But anyways, I sent him that response. He didn't get back to me, but he had a book launch. His book Angel had just come out at the time, and he was doing these meetups in San Francisco. And so he tweeted out one day. The tweet goes like, tweet a selfie of you in my book and we might invite you to watch Blade Runner 2049 with me and some friends. And so that was the tweet. I was like, all right, this is my opportunity. So he tweets that out, and I responded right immediately and tweet. I had his book with me, and so I tweet out a selfie. And then 5 minutes later, I'm on a thread with his EA Jess at the time, and she's like, nicely done, like, do you want to come out and watch Blade Runner this Thursday? And I'm from Toronto, so shout out Bearcat. And so I um, booked, as soon as I heard the news, I booked a flight uh, that night, and it was like a 3-day trip, literally just to come and watch this movie with Jason and whoever was going to show up. I had no idea. Book the flight, and then come out to SF for the first time, get to meet Jason, shake his hand, met some other cool founders and builders there, like Raul Vora, founder of Superhuman, and Ryan Hoover, founder of Product Hunt, now investing at Weekend Fund. So just that was like my first experience. I come out to SF and I meet like these like super cool founders and builders. I was like, wow, I was hooked like ever since. Like, this is such a cool spot to be. um, and so anyways, I meet Jason, talk to him for like literally 30 seconds because I was super nervous. And there was other people there wanting to talk to him, and his friends were there, so it's like weird to kind of steal his time. Anyways, I made a big enough impression, or I made an impression enough for him to remember that I was, the kid that was flying out from Toronto to come meet him. And so from that point, after the movie, the next day, I followed up with him, and he sent me another email. He was like, "Hey, I've got this conference next weekend." Or next week, Monday, Tuesday. Do you want to come? Or yeah, I think it was in 2 weeks. I've got a conference in 2 weeks. You can come out, maybe help out, and maybe we'll give you a project to work on if you're super motivated. So that's what his email said, and obviously I was super excited, and I was like basically all eggs in this basket. That was like 100% my focus, and so I fly back home to Toronto. I do whatever for a week, and then fly back out to SF to help out at the conference. It's called Launch Scale. It's like a pretty big conference in San Francisco that used to happen annually. Obviously, not anymore due to COVID. But flew out again. This time I stayed for a week, just to like line up more meetings and more opportunities. And so I come out, I help out at this conference. I meet his whole team. It's very small. There's probably like 5 people on the team. Um, Try to give them a good impression, and just really just try to be helpful. That's all I tried to do. So stuck my hand into anything that I thought I could help out during the conference and event. And at the time, it happened to be like doing social and helping with like speaker engagements and stuff like that. And so did that for the 2 days. At the last moment, obviously, I didn't get to see Jason during this because he's hosting the conference. And this is a funny story because this is like straight out of a movie. It's like the last day of the conference. It's the end. I still haven't met with Jason. I don't even know if he knows that I'm out there. So he's like now walking. The conference happened in this big, like, it was like in a mall but an event space. And so he was walking out. A bunch of people were like trying to talk to him, and then he got into the elevator. And then I also managed to sneak into the elevator, and I was like, "Hey, Jason, like, it's great to see you." And then he's like, "Oh, you made it. Like, what'd you think of the conference? That sort of stuff." I was like, "Yeah, it was great." And then he just kind of on the spot, just like gave me a project, and the project was to set up like 30 different meetups across the U.S. For his book launch. And he's like, "You can do this in Toronto, remote, and based on the outcome, we'll maybe hire you full time kind of thing. And he's like, we don't hire interns, but we'll hire you full time if we like the work you do. Um, and so that's what happened there, but it doesn't end there. So I'm super excited about this project, then fly back home, and then I get a call, and it's from Jason. And I don't even know how he had my number. He might have got it from like Jackie on our team, but he calls me, and I see like Jason Calacanis on my phone. I'm like, oh my god, what the heck? And I answer the phone, and he's like, so basically, my head of growth is just handed in his 2 weeks, and wants to kind of leave tech. And so I'm looking to kind of refill that position, for someone to do growth work at a launch. Are you interested? And so it's like a combination of being top of mind, a combination of luck, of course, and just like great timing. This head of growth was leaving the company. I happened to be top of mind, and was kind of positioning the conversation always to be in a more of like a marketing and like growth oriented role. Because that's where I had a little bit of skills, so that's kind of where I felt I could add value. And so yeah, that combination of being top of mind, having a little bit of skills, and his current person, his current growth person leaving, um, ended up giving me this little opportunity to work at launch and work for Jason. And then the rest is kind of history. Started off, like I mentioned at the beginning, on the media side, and then transitioned onto the investment team. And yeah, that's the long story of how it kind of all fell into place. But it's just like planting seeds is really the idea. Just doing a bunch of things, and then wherever there's traction, this can be the same for your products. Wherever there's traction, just doubling down on that, um, going all in, and just kind of not turning back. And usually it'll work out. Whether you think about it for a product sense, or just like career wise. That's just how it worked for me, and how I've seen it play out for a lot of people in the industry.
That was a lovely introduction, very elaborate, lots to dissect. So let's get into, dropping out of college. I think that's a decision that intimidates most. So, big up for sort of making that decision and like learning it's the right choice. What were your sort of emotions at the time of like dropping out? How were you feeling? What necessarily led you to drop out? All that.
Yeah, great questions. So yeah, how so I knew I had to do it because I was doing poorly in school. So some people might be fantastic at school, or just really smart. But for me, it was like it it was fairly an easy decision because I knew I couldn't do this. And I knew, yeah. I mean, realistically, I could have done it. I could have just forced myself to sit through and do all the assignments and stuff. But I figured, this 4 year period of time. What if I just get a job, and I if that job ends up teaching me real life things, then I'm not too concerned about the uh, the kind of pressure or judgment that would be associated with dropping out. However, I will say, like, yes, it was a little scary in terms of like, what if this didn't work out? What if I didn't get this opportunity? And then there's no like quote unquote like backup plan to do. But then I kind of reminded myself, like, realistically, I could always go to university. I might be older. It might be a little weird and like different age group if I do it later in life, but that's always there, and it's not really going anywhere. But the other thing that's not always there is like these opportunities that come up in like specific moments of time. And so this like email that I had sent to Jason, that response that he sent, it could have been buried in an inbox, and he could never have responded. And so I just kind of used those little moments of serendipity and just kind of build momentum off of it. Um, but there's also other things to manage, like parents. Obviously, I'm living at home, and so I need to explain that idea to my parents, and they happen to be super supportive of it, which was great. But I also think like I'm also the youngest in my family, and I have an older brother and sister who did traditional routes in terms of going to university and getting jobs, and so um, they weren't too concerned. If worst case, like I was the outcast who didn't go to university or get the proper job. But they still had two kids that did it, so I think they were more chill about it. But for me, like honestly, it was a really good experience. Supportive parents, and just the opportunity to even like fly out to SF and do that. Not many people have or get, and so I'm super grateful for that. But yeah, it's the way I would say the way I would conclude I was able to manage that process was like thinking that there's no other option, and when there's no other option on the table, it's kind of easy to figure things out. It's like you need to figure out like if we relate this back to a product or something, or you're building something, it's like you need to figure out how to get users, or you need to figure out how to build a product. Like that's your only option, you'll figure it out. You'll do whatever it takes. It might be hard at the time, but uh, I think there's enough resources out there to figure it out. And so that's, I would say, how I managed the process. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously ups and downs. um, there's many multiple days of just like reaching out to people and not getting any responses, that like will bring in some doubt, like, oh, is this strategy even going to work? um, but yeah, that's, I would say, how I felt.
Very valuable wisdom. Yeah, those are some like really great remarks. I think that was also a very interesting sort of story on dropping out, because I know a few people that have dropped out as well as Bearcat here. But that was the sort of like first of its kind I've heard, right? Like in the sense of, sort of not really excelling at school, but then having this little, you know, bit like the spark that's telling you, okay, if things don't work out, you will always be able to somehow find a fallback. So yeah, that was great. And what's even better is like most companies in Silicon Valley value like skill set over degree, so that's also a great
Yeah,
sort of
it's a
thing.
great point.
Yeah, but okay, so moving out from college, right? I think those that 6 month interval you had, um was it scary for you? Was it like, because you were a fresh dropout, right?
Hmm.
So what, like, where do you find your first job from? What were you doing in that 6 month interval? All that stuff.
Yeah, so that the 4 month like interval where I dropped out, right? Is that what you're referring to?
Oh yeah, my bad. Was it four? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Yeah, so basically, that period, all I was doing was, um, I was doing two things really. So one was, and kind of opportunities just like came to me, and I would say like opportunities just come when you're just doing things. And so what I was doing, I was building like e-commerce stores. I was big into like Shopify at the time. This was like 2016, 2017 time. And so Shopify was huge, but not as big as it is today, obviously. And so I was building a bunch of e-commerce like websites, and just like using a bunch of tools online. I'm so some context. I'm not a developer or technical, and so but understand how to use these programs and different pieces of tech, and so I could easily like build a nice e-commerce website. And so that's what I was doing, and I was trying to do that, just like with different product ideas that I had, um, all of like physical things. Um, in hindsight, I should have just started in software because it's way easier and cooler to build products, I think. But I was doing physical products and doing that whole like drop shipping thing, finding a interesting product and white labeling it from China, and then shipping it out, in the drop ship way. So I was building a couple stores, and then uh, those were all, they all like failed and like didn't really do anything. They'd made money. I would say like my first couple dollars on the internet was made through that, which was cool. When you get paid online, it's like a really cool moment that I'm sure some of you have had. Um, but obviously nothing to a major success, or anything that was going to make a lot of money. So I had these examples and these different projects, and that really was like my experience in my portfolio. What ended up being my experience in portfolio work. And I was using all those things as like use cases in my emails. Hey, I built this, and just to like show some you know yeah, portfolio of work really. And so those ended up being great, as like resources, as examples. One of them I got to kind of sell. It was a very small outcome, but listed it on Shopify Marketplace, and then someone wanted to buy it. So like got to see what like a little acquisition, but a little acquisition process looked like. And then yeah, so that was most of my time just spent doing that, and then got a couple like consulting gigs, or worked on like specific one-off projects that would keep me busy, and get to kind of um, flirt with my kind of skills that I had at the time, and just like do it. Really, it was more about like getting the reps in. So what could I what could I do that what could I do for other people, that would sharpen my skills, but also, maybe make a little bit of money, and, have it as a resource and an example going forward. So that's what that 4 month period kind of looked like, which working on, different Shopify stores. And then just, through that meeting different people, um, a little bit of networking, but that all happened organically from the things that I was building at the time.
For sure. True builder mindset.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I think it's great that you're sort of like, adding quantifiable additions to your portfolio to sort of like showcase to, recruiters and, whatnot. Uh, I think we should get into launch and like Jason now. So I think you sort of touched upon that in your introduction,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a very interesting topic. So I want to learn what started your path into launch. How did you get into there, starting all the way from Jason to where you are now?
Yeah. It's a good question. So, started off at launch, throughout the story of getting hired. So really, I was basically the only person that didn't work in SF, because I was in Toronto and lived in Toronto. And so I was working remote on the team. Um, and so I had very little interaction with everyone because they hadn't adopted remote work. I was the only remote person on the team. And we would have like one weekly team meeting that they would Skype me in. Like that's how like crazy this was. The fact that they were using Skype, for the first like first year really. I was the only remote person. But anyways, I would join team meeting once a week, but I would really just try to find things to do. So like the team was small, so literally like think 4 or 5 people on the team. Um, they all knew what they were doing, and they didn't even like really have too much time to give me work to do because they were so swamped. And so it was my job to figure out what I could take off their plate. And that's just like a really good, piece of advice that I heard from somewhere. It's like, if you don't know what to do, and if you're not doing anything, it's your job to figure out what to do. And so I just like asked a bunch of questions, saw what people were working on, and saw what I thought I could take off their plate. And by doing that, they were able to see what my skills were, and what I was good at. And then through that process, they would start giving me more work to do, which was great. And it all happened around, doing marketing stuff, but also like random things that you can do at an early stage startup. Um, and so had my hands in a bunch of different things early on. And so started on the media side, which meant my goal was to figure out how to grow the podcast. And so this was cool because I had kind of full autonomy to do a bunch of things. And so one of the things was like we weren't doing clips at the time. And so we were just posting our podcast online. And so I got to, kind of dabble with content creation, doing clips. We had big social followings, but no one was like utilizing them. So took over all the channels and figured out fun ways to cut up the content. And I was able to do all that stuff because I had previously used Premiere Pro and had those small skills. But you don't have to be super skillful. You just have to most of the time know how to use cool pieces of technology and kind of workshop it together. And so that's what I did for like the first year. Then Jason liked what he had saw and also liked the idea of remote. He started to kind of get more into this remote idea, and so what he asked me, he was like, probably 8 months into the job, he was like, Presh, I want to start, or I'm thinking of starting a Toronto team. Um, are you interested in helping build that out? And so that was a cool project to work on. I got to essentially find and hire a couple people in Toronto to help with marketing because the podcast was growing. And I get to run that team. So I was like, whoa, this is a cool opportunity. Um, that that he's given me. And so literally like 8 months, 9 months in, I started posting job listings. Had no idea how to do this, but a lot of help from the team, obviously. And so posted job offerings, did a bunch of interviews. And then we ended up getting a co-working space in Toronto called Spaces, or at Spaces. um, and then from there I got to like manage this team, learn about that was a whole new experience. I probably don't like managing people, is what I learned from that experience. I'd rather just uh, you know be a part of teams, and more so just like in a building capacity. I think that's more interesting. But it was a cool experience, and I learned a lot, which was great. So built out this team. Now we have 3 people, 4 people, including me in Toronto. This is like 28, end of 2018, or I guess, yeah, end of 2018, early 2019. Um, and so I was doing that. I was fully occupied with that. Still wanted to come out to SF, but that like took all my time. And so was really just focused on that for the next year or so, all of kind of 2019. And then at the end of 2019, I had an opportunity to come out to SF with my visa and stuff, and that's a whole nother story. That'll take a long time, but I'm happy to share more. Maybe I'll do like a blog post on that visa process. Um, but ended up getting a visa and was able to move out to SF. And then at that point, I'd been working at Launch for 2 years, and Jason asked if I had wanted to join the investment team, and I thought that would be another cool experience. So it's like each part of my journey at Launch is like almost every year or every other year, or sorry, yeah, every other year I get almost like a new role, and that's super exciting to me. And so now I've started off on the media side, then got the chance to learn about like management and what it's like to run a team, also on the marketing side, and then now he's giving me this new role on the investment side, and I'm just like, yes, yes, yes. All of these things are sound incredible, and sounds like I could learn a lot. And so I come out to SF end of 2019. I'm on the investment team, um, and then this whole period is him kind of just teaching me what he knows about investing and how to pick great companies, what to look for, all those kind of things. So yeah, that's kind of the journey to date. I'm actually, I just the past I guess week and a half, transitioned into a new role at Launch, um, which I'm super excited about. It's called a chief of staff, and so I'm still learning about
Wow, that.
what that entails, but essentially just working more closely with Jason and different special projects. Still essentially on the investment side. Still, obviously looking for founders. That's the end of the day. That's our business model, investing in companies. But now working more closely and get to work on these special projects and relationships. So it's like literally every other year. I think there's a new new role, which is it's not always the case at like startups. Like, I mean, I would say it's more often the case at startups versus uh, not at startups, which is why I'm such a big fan of working at early stage companies.
Makes complete sense. And yeah, the chief of staff role is, I mean, I guess the definition varies from like entity to entity.
Hmm.
But from hindsight, I think it's a great role. It's something super interesting. I really want to dive into like team management and teamwork and how that started. So you mentioned that you got this incredible opportunity to manage a team based out of Toronto, I believe, from
Yeah.
the co-working spaces. Yeah. So team management is, I think everyone is obviously entitled to their own opinions, but like teamwork and team management is such a critical skill, for an entrepreneur at the least. So I want to know, I want to dive deep into your like experience with that. What were your initial thoughts on it? When did you come to realize that okay, you weren't like a huge fan of managing, folks from a larger scale, all of that.
Yeah. Great question. So my management experience was pretty short lived. I only really like managed the team for like 8 months, 8 to 10 months, let's say. But yeah, definitely learned that, was not too interested in it, for like a couple things that came up. Like, the I would say the main thing really is, it just takes a bunch of like all your time. Like, if you're a manager, all your time is spent managing, and you get away from the creative things. um, and so and you're not in the trenches, quote unquote, and so you don't see the same things as people building are seeing or people executing are seeing, and so you have a lack of context on that front. um, and maybe that was me being like not good enough as a manager where I should have known these contexts, but I think it's just generally harder to, um, do creative things when all you're doing is managing things, managing people, like all like basically, I'll give some examples. Like, my days would just be filled with meetings, or one-on-ones, or like sync up calls just to see where progress is at and stuff like that. And so like that was a new experience which I enjoyed, but didn't enjoy it enough to kind of want to go full into it. And some people are great managers and love people and love conversations and love meetings, and that's great. But I think it just didn't fit with my personality. um, your company needs managers, obviously. It's an important role, but the main thing is like figuring out if you're the right person to be that manager. I happen to like more of the creativity, more of the execution, and that sort of stuff versus the kind of talking, the one-on-ones, um, the the culture building, all that stuff. I thought was super valuable, but just wasn't kind of what I wanted to spend most of my time doing. And so when I got the opportunity to not have to be the the kind of manager or head of marketing, at the company, I was like, all right, let's try something new. Let's go on to the investment side. That's more. It's still collaborative, but it's less of a management. Everyone kind of has to manage their own process.
Love it. Yeah, I think the rationale is like 200% valid. And as a builder, it sort of makes sense that like you like to get your hands messy. You're not a huge fan of these manager sort of
Yeah.
postings, right?
Right.
And I think managing people, it's an interesting sort of thing to do, but it's also really time consuming. And it's like it's almost
Exactly.
what's the word for it? It's like it's monotonous because you're constantly giving out these instructions to people. You're like, even from like a technical point of view, as someone that codes a
Hmm.
lot, having to sort of give instructions to someone as to, okay, this is one working component of the code base, this is another working component of the code base, this is how these two come together and sort of make this happen, it can get annoying and monotonous at times. So completely understand how that works. Um, but yeah, great perspective. Can we talk more about your chief of staff position? That was something I was sort of interested in diving into.
Yeah,
So when did Jason give you this opportunity? If you're obviously if you're at liberty to talk about it.
of course.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So it happened. So in December, I got a message from Jason, and he said he sprung the idea that he was looking for a chief of staff, and asked me if I'd be interested in that. And I was like, just based on history, like all the opportunities that he's presented have just been amazing. Even if I didn't like it, I still learned a ton. So I was like, yes, I'm interested. And then I asked him what it would entail, and he was pretty broad with it. He just, said, um, managing a bunch of relationships, working on special projects, being kind of, front contact person, anyone trying to reach me. And he said those three things really. And I said, sounds great, let's do it. And then, it was Christmas break. He had been traveling, and it had just been a busy time at work. So a couple months kind of went by. And then a couple weeks ago, well, and then also during this process, like organically, we had been trying to hire another analyst on the team to help with our accelerator, which is where I spent a bunch of my time as well. Um, and so we hired someone who's great. His name's Andre, and I just naturally organically was starting to give a bunch of onboard a bunch of my work onto Andre, and kind of the process of uh, everything that I had, my foot in, I would try to give it to Andre. And so did that for the couple weeks. And then, shot a message to Jason. I was like, hey, the chief of staff thing still on your mind? We have, Andre on the team who's able to handle a lot of the work that I was working on. Um, what are your thoughts, kind of thing. Sent that message, and he's like, yes, still interested in it. And a couple weeks go by, um, and then he follows up, and then he's like, all right, kind of just saying, yeah, he essentially gave me a bigger job description of what the role would entail, and then said, you'll start on Monday, kind of thing. And this was like 2 weeks ago, and so really the role of chief of staff is essentially make the CEO's life easier, and give him more time for creative opportunities, to run the business versus him stuck in meetings, versus him having to deal with a bunch of questions, versus him getting pinged here and there from different kind of employees at the company. And so really it's going to be a role, and I'm still learning, like I'm only like 2 weeks in really, but for the most part, how I see it, it's going to be a role where I free up most of his time to do creative things. So that means I'll have to be interacting with more kind of stakeholders, essentially. And so people at the company, they need something from Jason. It'll be my job to get that done, or figure out a way to not have Jason involved, if possible. So freeing up a lot of his times. And then the other thing is working on special projects, which is cool. Um, it's cool for a guy like Jason who has a ton of different opportunities, and really cool people like just like reaching out to him all the time. So it made sense, or
Yeah.
it really excited me in that sense, because I see the emails and coming through his inbox, and people wanting to meet with him, different founders, all these kind of cool opportunities that I think I'll now have a more forward facing relationship with.
Yeah. 100%. So I think that's a great posting for you because you get to do more of the messy work again, which is from what I've heard, what you love, in the context of this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So essentially, chief of staff is like the advisor and the assistant to the CEO. Um, that's awesome. I think when we do reach out to Jason, you'll be the one to reply for a talk. Um,
Yeah.
that'll be fun. I think okay, so I think that's sort of that concludes my end of the conversation. Bearcat, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. I actually just wanted to add on, like, cause I know we've been talking about like a bunch of like investing and stuff like that and launch too. But I've also been following your Twitter for a while now too, and I've noticed that you're also really into like running and stuff like that. So
Yes.
like, how do you get into like running and like is there like any sort of personal record that you've set, or like how often do you do running? Or yeah, I guess we'll just start at that.
Yeah.
Fun off
Yeah.
topic personal question.
I
Yeah.
love that. Thanks, Bearcat. Uh, so yeah, man, running really started like in 2017 for me. I would start very small. I would do like 2 to 4 kilometer runs, and it would take me a long time. But I got into it because I've been following someone named Jesse Itzler, who's like a entrepreneur and sold a bunch of companies. But he had started running and just talked about his journey of running a 100-mile race, and I thought that was so crazy. And he did it basically. He had never run a marathon, or a half marathon, or really any sort of race event, but and the most he could run was like 2 miles. But he signed up for this 100-mile run and completed it. He completed it in like a crazy long time, but the idea of him doing that feat was super like inspiring to me. And so I'd just kind of been following him, and he always posted running content. I was like, I would like to try running. I always hated running. But I was like, if I could do something that I hate, maybe over time I'll end up loving it. That was kind of my idea or philosophy at the time, and so I would just run like 2 kilometers a day, and I would say what actually got me to enjoy running was the kind of tech aspect around it, which was not even like the shoe technology or any of that. I didn't really care about. I really just like loved the tracking component, and so I had used the Nike Run Club app. Now I use Strava, but these apps are so cool and so like designed very efficiently, and so they can track your runs and give you a nice little graphic of your route that you ran. And then obviously tell you how long you ran, what your pace was, all that stuff. So the tracking component and the tech behind that I thought was super cool, and I would always love to post about it. And so started that way, running, doing very small runs, and then over time it's like those small runs become a bit longer and a bit longer and a bit longer, and all easier obviously as time goes on. And so now doing more longer distance runs, um, still like and getting more introduced to runners that are like crazy long distance, which is like doing like 50-mile races, 100-mile races. The fact that I'm like now meeting these people that do these things are like super cool too. But I think like I got into it from Jesse Isler, and then just really just fell in love with it because I thought it was like a cool and easy workout to just do in a short amount of time. And then I love the kind of tech and tracking aspect of it. And also it's like much it's less it's cooler to kind of like post photos of running workouts versus like a gym selfie. I always found, so I could just like take a nice picture outside, of like a tree or something versus a mirror selfie, and then have like the overlay of how much I ran. I always liked that idea. And then also like I just did I had never done a race, so I was like, all right, maybe I should do a race. And so I just did the Berkeley half marathon this past, I guess 2 weekends ago. And that was like a really fun experience. Um, I trained for it, but really it's just like I run pretty much every day at this point. And so just took that a bit more serious, did a little more like training on the like track, to kind of improve my speed, because I never really cared about speed. I was always just more of like a distance um, runner. And so spent more time on speed, did my first Berkeley half, which went really good. And yeah, I'm like more excited to do more halves and then hopefully a full marathon.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was just checking out your Twitter, seeing the posts. Fun
Yeah.
stuff. So okay, so I was a bit off topic here.
Yeah.
Not really related to the well, it is, but like not really related to anything we've talked about yet. But I remembered something my mom told me earlier this morning,
Yeah.
and I want to go into like your supporters throughout your journey, because like support is something that's vital to anyone's journey. It's always important to have these kind of folks that are like always, pushing you. They're motivating you constantly.
Hmm.
So who are some of those names in your journey till date that have really been, by your side? They've been backing you. They've been constantly pushing you to keep building and, keep doing your things.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So like first, I mean, you mentioned you were talking to your mom, and like I would say like my mom for sure as well. Big support. Always like interested in what I'm doing. She's like kind of the first person I share anything with. Whether or not she like understands what I'm working on is another story, but it's like, um, I know she's always gonna kind of support me, which is super inspiring to me, and I'm super grateful for. So I would say first and foremost, it's like my mom. Um, always try to talk to her, as much as I can, and just get that good energy flowing. So yeah, my mom. Other people, it's more so just like what I see and who I follow, which I'm very like. I try to be very specific with, and or intentional, I should say. Um, People doing cool things, building cool things is always such an inspiration and inspires me. And so when I see like things like even builder group, like it's such a super inspiring thing to me, that there's a community of builders all building cool things, all working at cool companies, super young into their careers. Like that stuff is so exciting, super energizing, and it makes me want to do more. It's like, yeah, what I see, a cool project. I'm like, oh, this is so interesting. How could I think about this, in my life? Or I get, inspired by, a design or a product feature that I see, that's on Twitter or something. And so it's really just like being intentional about who I follow on social, and that and then obviously like the other piece of that is sharing, and you guys in Bearcat does an incredible job like of just sharing his progress and sharing different updates, different projects he's working on, all that kind of stuff. I think all of that is like such a good strategy because keeps you kind of accountable and gets people to see what you're working on. And worst case, if it doesn't result into anything, it's like it's a kind of a journal of things you've done, and that is super powerful. So I think
Oh
it's just
yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah, no, I
people.
love the sentiment. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No,
Yeah, you continue.
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, no, so I was just saying, like, I love the sentiment towards Builder Group, and it's equally as exciting for myself, Bearcat, and the other co-founders, as it is to sort of see folks, actively interacting, building awesome things together, right? Meeting new
Yeah,
people. And again, true builder mindset, looking at cool designs and cool products and whatnot. And okay, you're like, wow, I could build something like this. So yeah,
exactly.
that's great. I am going to have to leave right now. I think Bearkin can take over the rest as well as like the community Q&A. Our community has compiled some questions for you, I
Awesome.
believe. So yeah, they'll we can sort of ask those. Bearkin, feel free to call on anyone on stage. I'm only leaving right now because my phone is about to die. It's on like 1%. So that's really really killing me.
Yeah,
Um,
no
but yeah,
problem.
it
It's
was
great.
great
It's
talking
great
to you,
chatting with you.
Presh.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, right. Likewise, likewise. This was a great conversation. And yeah, one more thing coming back to the builder group sentiment. It's like we get to talk to folks like, such incredible people who are doing incredible things at incredible startups like yourself. So thank you for this opportunity. I had a great time speaking with you, and Berke will take over from here.
Likewise. Take care, man. Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye bye.
All right. So I guess there are a few community questions that we have here that we
Cool.
have asked. So I guess we'll just go through those. So for the first one, asked by Conrad, he asks, "What is some advice that you would give for those under 18 who are looking for investors slash raising a seed round?"
Great question. Who's that from? What's the name?
Conrad.
Conrad. Awesome. Conrad, great question. So you're young and you're looking for funding. So couple questions I would say you want to ask yourself since you are young is, and I'm assuming just assuming nothing, assuming no context, is like if what you're working on, you're willing to work on it for the next 10 years. If you can, or maybe not even 10 years, but like, are you willing to work on the project that you want to raise money for a long time? So kind of asking yourself that is going to put you in a whole nother league versus someone who just wants to raise money for a project. And the reason that is because investors are going to look at your project and say, maybe it's like a tool, maybe it does a very specific thing, which is valuable, but maybe they don't see it as a business, but you see it as a business, and so you paint kind of a vision or a picture of different things that you can build along the way. It starts off as a tool, but you can build it into a company over time as as the product grows, essentially. So kind of painting that vision, and knowing that you're going to work on this for a very long time doesn't mean you're going to work on it, but just like having that intent to work on this project for a long time is going to show the investor that this builder is in it for the long term versus just building a little side project, that if the founder loses interest, the product kind of shuts down. And so that's a good question to just ask yourself. If you even need to raise money, like why? Is it because you need to hire people, or are you a builder and you can already build the product? Maybe you're past that. Maybe you've got an incredible product and you're looking for investors. Then at that point, it's a numbers game, and so it's literally a, a full-time job raising capital. For some it comes easy, for some it comes much harder. I've seen incredible founders struggle with fundraising. I've seen mediocre founders be incredible at fundraising, and vice versa. And so it really is a numbers game, in terms of how many investors you're reaching out to. A quick easy strategy, depending on if it's your first time raising, and let's say you're going full time and you want to go full time on your product, just easy things you could do at an early stage, and let's say you're not well connected, is kind of join an accelerator or these different community groups. So we obviously have an accelerator, but there's a bunch of other great ones. On Deck has now an accelerator and a great community. Y Combinator, Techstars, all those are like great communities and invest in companies. And so through those programs, you'll meet with a bunch of investors. So I think accelerators or accelerator programs are valuable at the very early stage if you're doing your like first time fundraise. The other kind of quick strategy, real quick, is going on Crunchbase, using PitchBook. You might not have access to PitchBook if you don't work at a fund or have a subscription there, but Crunchbase is for the most part free. You can find investors that have invested in similar products, or adjacent industries, and so finding those investors or their profile through Crunchbase and then finding them on LinkedIn, shooting them a note, shooting them an email, preferably, very short and concise email, kind of pitching what you do in one sentence, maybe adding a Loom video into the email so the investor can kind of click it. And investors love traction, and so if you have a quick screenshot of maybe users or interactions in the app or whatever you're building, that'll get a bunch of eyes. But it is a hard job. Fundraising is super hard. For some, it comes easy, but and you'll see headlines all the time, and so you'll think it's like, why is it so easy? Realistically, it's hard and takes a lot of time. So I would just keep at it and shoot me an email. I'd love to kind of see what you're building as well.
Awesome. Yeah. No, that's a lot of awesome advice from there. And I know, like, even a lot of people like that you might have heard too that launches invested into, they've had like a tough time even themselves
Yeah, yeah, all
fundraising.
the time.
Yeah, it is a hard process. I haven't personally fundraised or raised around before, but I know it's very difficult. Hearing from so many people's past experiences. But yeah, awesome, awesome.
And then
So,
one thing I'll just add
all
really
right.
just on top of that, Bearcat, is if if you're doing something like as yourself, like sharing progress online of your company on Twitter, where a lot of investors hang out, and you're kind of building an audience, that's always going to signal like very positively for investors because they can kind of just see your profile sometimes. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've had many conversations, Bearcat. I mean, it's kind of how we got connected as well.
Yeah,
Just like seeing your work on social. Whether or not they invest in your company, you'll at least get connected to an investor. They could maybe connect you to another investor that they might know who might be more interested or more early stage. Let's say I was worked at a later stage firm, but knew a bunch of early stage investors. I could then introduce them to Bearcat and kind of take it from there. So I think being social and kind of sharing whatever you're comfortable with at least is a good strategy to fundraising.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I agree with that. But yeah, awesome, awesome. So, the next question here is by Tejas. They ask, what advice would you give to U18s wanting to break into VC and be an investor?
Great question, Tejas. So the advice I would give early, like to anyone, was it under 18?
Yeah, under 18.
Under 18, it is so you could get your foot in the door by um, like figure out what I guess skill you have at the time. And this could be maybe you're a developer and really good at making websites or really good at building tools. That's an example. So you could then use whatever skill that is and go to a bunch of earlier stage VC firms, and try out some late stage ones too as well. But early stage VC firms who are very like capital constrained themselves. Like they've just raised a small fund, maybe it's like $5 million fund, $10 million fund, and so they don't have that much money to spend on hiring, um, you know, an exec level employee, for example. But they're just themselves essentially a startup and need help with managing deal flow, need help with finding startups. And so the good strategy could be, if using this example, let's say you are a developer, is maybe you build the tool for this small firm to help them with deal flow, or maybe even find companies for them as well. So doing these small things, just reaching out to them and showing them what you can do. Ideally, this will work in any industry, primarily tech and VC, because those are, I feel like, more open to taking chances on people. Um, and so create a list. The strategic way to go about it, or tactical way to go about it. Create a list of funds under $10 million, $10 million under management essentially, and you can find this on Crunchbase. You can like Google this and you know check out some headlines of just different entrepreneurs or investors that have raised small funds. A lot of them are ex founders. Follow a bunch of people on Twitter. Um, hit me up if you want a list of kind of early stage funds, and I can provide that as well because we have relationships with a bunch of them. And so create that list and then go and contact the GP, which is general partner at those funds, um, or partner level. But primarily, if you can, get the GP, that's the best, point of contact. And then just show them what you can do, whether it's, like I said, building the kind of tool to help them, or whether it's just giving them deal flow. At the end of the day, if you are sending them deals, they're gonna look at it because they have to. Um, And I know Jason. People send Jason deals all the time, and maybe he doesn't have time to look at it, but he'll send them to me, and I'll take a look at it and see if it's kind of worth pursuing. So at the earlier stage fund, it's even more so important because they're trying to build their brand and trying to get more deal flow. And so if you can provide deal flow, that's kind of number one, or just be helpful in any way, build tools. I think that's another good idea.
Oh, sorry. Oh, it wasn't letting me unmute. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, awesome. There's a lot of advice there that I'm just trying to like acknowledge. Because that you are our first investor that we've had for a talk and that I've really spoken to in depth. In a while.
Oh,
So
cool. That's
there's
awesome.
a lot to take in. But yeah, awesome advice.
Thank you,
But
man.
yeah, for the next question here, someone asks, why don't you buy the domain pre.sh? It's an epic domain.
That's a great idea. I didn't even think about it. Is it available? Let me check. I think that's cool. pre.sh. What is sh? Do you know?
I know, I don't know what it stands for, but I've used it for a few projects.
Oh, you have. Oh, it's just taken.
Oh, that would have been good.
That's funny. I should reach out to see who owns that. But that's a great idea.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. So for the next question here, by Alpha Null, they ask how do you obtain investors for a startup and how to start investing myself. And I guess you touched up on that earlier, but
Yeah, I can touch on the how to start investing yourself as well. So there's a couple things on that. So yeah, how to get investment for your startup. Really, it's just that, to summarize. If you're building something cool, compile a list of investors who have who invested in similar products. They're more inclined to they're more inclined to reply to the email because they have some context. And keep the email very small, and then always include a product demo, or maybe like a Loom recording, let's say, inside the email, so they can just click out, see the video, and maybe if you have a chart, that's great too. Preferably an upward trending chart of users or interactions in your product. So that's kind of how to get investors, or join an accelerator, that sort of stuff. Then in terms of kind of investing in yourself in startups, so there's you have to kind of be conscious of different regulations in terms of like wherever you live. So there's this thing called accreditation in the U.S., and so you have to, and this is changing by the way, but you have to be an accredited investor to invest in startups. It'll change soon enough where anyone can be an accredited investor in startups. And this is just like all like regulatory stuff that was introduced to protect companies as well as investors. And so there's that to there's that part to consider. But I would say if you're just starting out, a cool thing to do is Turner. So Turner Novak, I don't know if everyone knows him. He's huge on Twitter now, but he started off. He worked at like a private equity firm, but had always kind of been interested in startups, and he just created a Google sheet and started picking startups that he wanted to invest in, and like recording the date that he had picked them, and gave an example of, let's say he wrote a 10K check or a 100K check into this company, and so he just created a running list of startups in like a Google spreadsheet, and then would track them with any fundraising news that they had, and seeing those markups over time. And so he started at he had Lambda School, I think, on there, and said, let's say he invested in 2018 or something, or even earlier. I don't know, I can't remember when they were founded, but let's say that he invested at the first year that they were founded, at whatever valuation, maybe it was like a $10 million valuation, and then he tracked over time with different fundraising articles that would pop up. He obviously didn't have insider information, being an outsider at the time. TechCrunch would post an article. Oh, Lambda School is valued at 100 million, let's say. then he would kind of update his Google spreadsheet and show that markup and show that return, that 100K now $1 million position or a $10 million position. And so you would do that. Another term for this is just like a mock portfolio, essentially. And so he would create this mock portfolio and had a spreadsheet over time, and that was his kind of basically resume of investing. And obviously it's not real money but it shows the outside world that you can kind of pick startups and that you maybe have an insight into picking good companies that generate alpha. And so that's kind of one example that just stood out with that question. The other way to kind of invest in startups now, there's this product called Party Round, partyround.com. They're more of a fundraising tool for founders. But if you're friends with founders that use Party Round, I think they manage the whole process of easily wiring money to that startup. Obviously, take it with a grain of salt, or do your own due diligence on the product that you're investing in. And there's a whole kind of process that we can get into, but that's a longer thing. We have a podcast called Angel that we produce, that Jason hosts, that kind of talks with early stage fund managers, and how to think about early stage investing and how to get into it. A great way to do it, or to dabble with it, is sign up on AngelList and get into a bunch of syndicates if you can, and you can see a bunch of deal flow, and then participate in the deals that you find exciting. But I think for me personally, at I'm starting to do like very small checks into companies, and the companies that I do, it's like people that I know or friends. And so there's not really much due diligence I need to know other than that they're my friend and this is a sick product that they're building. And so I want to be a part of it and maybe throw in some money. And so that's kind of the advice, is like, if you have a friend that's building something cool, just ask them if you can invest and or be a part of it, small check or not. It's a fun little experiment. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I definitely think it does, and I know like even now there's a lot of people under 18 that are also getting into investments, and
Yeah.
just investors and just generally. And I know even in Build the Group, there's Alexa, someone called Alexa, and they're building something called Bloom, and it's basically helping teens get into investing.
Oh, cool. What's the domain?
It's joinbloom.co. So yeah, it's BLOOM. But yeah, they're basically doing that, and they also they are part of the YC batch too for last year, I'm pretty sure. So it's really cool.
Oh, this looks like a sweet product.
Yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, they're doing a really good job with that, and I'm excited to see where it comes with that. And I was surprised that like with like apparently it's only available in the U.S. I'm pretty sure right now, but there may be a possibility that they expand to other countries like UK. But
Nice.
they have to like follow like with all the like legal rules and stuff with investing under 18.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Sure.
but yeah. But anyway, we can move on to the next question here. We're almost done here. All right. So the next question here is, what's important in an elevator pitch / pitch deck to catch your investor's attention?
Yeah. So great question. The main thing, or a couple things that I can speak to us as a firm that we are interested in, I would think a bunch of other firms and investors are, is one is like a really nice, a nicely designed product is always a good thing. Eye grabbing product doesn't have to be overly designed. It just has to be a simple but elegant design. So think like Calm, think like Uber, think like what's another could app? Let me just check my phone here. Zero Fasting, that app is really nice. What's another good one here? Racket, Reflect. These are very simple products, but they're simply designed and are, have one or two things that just grab your attention. So a good design product. The other thing is some traction, or a big use case for that product. Always another good thing to include. And so this usually, for the most part, is like, if you can get it into a chart, that's great. Give something visual for the investor to see. So good design, and really just like some traction on the product, the early version of the product. Then when you get later on, it's like about, what's your team like, how good are you at executing, that sort of stuff. But if you can show a good product, that kind of answers the execution problem, or question. And then from there, the investor is just going to be more interested to engage. And then you've got traction, and so now it's like, okay, they're able to build a good looking product, and a product that obviously people want to use. I'll take a further look, and that's how they'll think about it.
Yeah, I agree there. I think I've made like one or two pitch decks before, but they didn't really, like, I didn't really, how do I say, I didn't use them as much. Like, I just made them, just like for the
Yeah.
pitch. But
Yeah,
but
it's
yeah,
good. I mean, it's good practice. Like,
yeah,
to learn how to tell the story of what you're building. It's not as easy as I thought.
yeah, definitely, yeah. But yeah, awesome. So the last question here is actually by Robert, and he asks,
Shout
what's
out, Robert.
what's been the biggest surprise you've had during a pitch?
Ooh, the biggest surprise. That's a good one. I think for the most part, the biggest surprise, like, I won't give a specific example, but it was when the founder of the company, I would say, they had, like, amazing designed product, but we got to the end of the pitch, and they, you know, they weren't really builders themselves. They had kind of outsourced the design to third party, like design agency or something, and they just had the broad idea of what this product would look like. Got the whole design firm to design the product, and really just like fundamentally weren't builders, like had no team. Which, I mean, if you're pitching the product and you're not yourself the builder, that's fine. I would assume you have maybe a co-founder or a team. But in this case, there was like no team, no co-founders, more just like an idea that the person had, and had outsourced and spent a bunch of money on trying to get it built. And so that usually is kind of a red flag, because most investors are wanting to see, like, at the early stage, like, if you can build the product yourself, because like there are going to be times where you're going to be cash constrained, and the product still might need to keep running. And so how are you going to do that if you can't build or develop the product yourself, or have a team that can do that? And so that was kind of, those situations always stand out to me. And then the other one is, like, when founders, if they don't really know that, or haven't really thought about if they really want to fundraise, but are still pitching investors and stuff. Like, you really need to think about if you do need VC dollars in your company, and maybe you need to fundraise, but it doesn't need to be from VCs, because VCs are always going to want to see that $1 billion outcome, just in terms of the kind of economics of a fund, and how that works. They always want to see the big outcomes. And so if you want to build a great product, maybe it does a couple $1 million a year, but you just want it to be a couple $1 million product a year, then maybe you don't need VC dollars. There are a bunch of other investors out there that'll still invest, that you just need to kind of get exposure to. And so that's the other thing to think about, I would say. And that always stands out to me. It's like, just asking, like, yourself if you really do need VC dollars for this product that you're working on. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Robert. I couldn't give you a specific example, but that's the general idea.
Yeah, amazing. That's a great story. And I'm sure like you've heard like a bunch of pitches, and there have been like a lot of things that you've experienced, like some like amazing pitches, some maybe terrible, some like just like that have shocked you. But
Yeah,
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 and then there's like been amazing products that where it's just the pitch is maybe terrible, but I can see that's clearly an awesome product, and so it's still worth digging into.
yeah,
Um, so like the pitch is just like a thing that can be refined over time. Really, at the end of the day, it's like, what have you built? Is the product cool? Does it solve a problem? Do you have users? And do you have the ability to hire and build a team?
yeah. Definitely agree. And yeah, that is an amazing way to, I guess, end it off. Um,
Awesome.
but yeah,
It's been super
thank you.
fun, Bearcat. Thanks for organizing this all and for the great questions
No
from everyone.
worries. Thank you for joining us. And this the space is recorded, so if anyone wants to listen to it after, you're welcome to do so. But yeah, I guess that's where we'll end it off. Thank you so much for
Awesome,
coming
man.
to talk.
Yeah, thank you so much. And anyone building, I'd love to kind of learn more about what you're building and talk about the product. And if you're ever fundraising, shoot me an email.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fresh.
Yeah, thanks, Bearcat.
All
Thanks,
right.
everyone.
All right. Talk to you later.
See ya.